Welcome to It's Your Date with Destiny with Apostle Vivian and Pastor Jemma Duncan of Divine Destiny Worship Center in Diego Martin. For the next 30 minutes, join us as we take you on a journey of maximizing your potential and realizing your goals through Jesus Christ.
Why is it when you need a miracle, it doesn't happen, but when you least expect it, it happens?
You are married, you have challenges in your relationship, but your spouse is unwilling to accede to any counseling. Is divorce an option?
How does a parent handle a promiscuous child?
What are considered the do's and don'ts of a born-again couple who is not yet married?
There are always more questions than answers. So here is Apostle Jemma.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to us, Pastor Jemma. Thank you for taking the time to be with me today. This morning, as usual, I'm going to be speaking on a very important topic, and I want you to sit, join me, maybe call up somebody, and let's talk about life-changing decisions that we may have to make. If you're a first-time viewer, I am Jemma Duncan. I'm married to Apostle Vivian Duncan. Together we pastor Divine Destiny Worship Center. Our headquarters is located in Diego Martin, on the Diego Martin Main Road, opposite Sardonynx Drive. We have branches in Sangre Grande, in Shoguanas, Faizabad, Rio Claro. We have a branch in Tobago and one in Antigua. Today, our topic is, what advice would you give young people about dating? Important topic, and I'm wondering if it's just young people alone should be given the advice, because even adults make mistakes. Just recently, I was listening to the radio with a person who was abused and, miraculously escaped with her life. It's nothing short of a miracle that this woman is still alive. And the amazing thing is, she was beaten, threatened, locked in a car trunk, and a number of things happened. Stalked, tried to hide, and the husband would find her, and all of that. And finally, she was able to get away from him. Would you believe, sometime afterwards, she married somebody, and she chose somebody exactly like her former husband. It didn't take long for him to start abusing her in the same manner. Why it is we make the same mistakes? Because I'm sure she would have been very careful and cautious as to the second person, and looking for certain signs. So I think this applies to everybody. You're getting into a relationship, there are a number of things, very important things we must pay attention to. I want to start by saying we need to understand that dating is a preamble to marriage. It is not intended to be a period for sampling the goods, because a lot of people just go around dating this one, that one, the other one, and if it doesn't seem as it should be, you move to somebody else, you flip from this one to that one. And it's like a free-for-all, because we don't really ascribe to standards today. And I'm saying to those of you who are listening that dating is a preamble to marriage. If you do not see this person as marriageable, then you should really not be dating that individual. All right, time span. I've seen people who talk about their dating or they're going around. That's normally what we will say in Trinidad, 5 years. Some people 10 years. I'm not quite understanding what that is about. Reasonable, we think a year is good. A year and a half is stretching it. And 2 years perhaps. And when you have to have beyond 1 year, it should be for a good reason. Like that person studying, you're finishing off your studies. And sometimes studies could complicate, or I should say marriage could complicate your studies. So perhaps you're shifting the dates based on finishing a deadline to finish off something like that. And to me, that is what will prolong it a little bit. Firstly, to begin with, you have to become accountable. From the time you see somebody that you're interested in or there's mutual interest, inform somebody. inform your parents. Don't be secretive about this person, because many times only when it goes awry then the parents realize, hey, you know, my daughter or my son was dating somebody, because it's a secret thing. You know, inform somebody because it makes you accountable. Inform your pastor if, you know, it's a church. What about a trustworthy advisor or counselor? Somebody who would walk you through the paces of this dating process, or getting to know that individual process, or preparing for marriage if it reaches that stage process. And you're toing and froing, so you're going back and forth with that person and saying so and so and so, this is what happened, how did it go when you went out, what happened, how did this person respond and react, and all of kind of thing. And so you're talking through the whole process. Now these conversations that you're going to have with this advisor is to establish your fitness and the other person's fitness for dating. Sometimes an advisor will say, you know, based on what you say to them and the experiences you've had, you know what, you probably shouldn't continue with this relationship. And now the problem is we don't really take the advice of those people who you ask. And most people ask for advice, and I think hoping that the counselor, the advisor would agree with what you want to do. And in many cases, because there is that emotional attachment, we tend to go against what was the advice given to us at that stage. And that's the best stage to walk away from a relationship like that if there is trouble, right? Some danger signals. And because I talked about this lady's experience, I would put at the top of the danger signal. I can't say it is the most important, but the tendency to be violent, the tendency to be angry, because sometimes you see that person not with you, that person may be driving and another driver would have given them what we call a bad drive, and you see some anger demonstrated, but you could be justifiably angry, but it's a bit extreme. Little things happen here and there, and the person's reaction, you know, and you tell yourself, wow, that doesn't look quite good. Now remember, that person is supposedly in love with you and trying to be on their best behavior, so that anger is hardly ever towards you initially. Because some people don't even care to impress you, but that's another story. You know, if you don't even care to impress me, well, you know that's something you should walk away from. However, so you observe anger, how they treat with stuff and so on. What about people? Danger signals. The person that you say you're dating is married. Now, for the life of me, I'm old school. I was taught that way from a very young person, you know, that if somebody is married, then there's no discussion. I mean, we're not having any conversation. There's nothing to talk about. I don't even have to tell you I'm not interested. We're not having a conversation about a relationship. There is no conversation, right? Some people who promised to get divorced, that's our next story. And most, especially it happens to women a lot, where the gentleman promises that he's going to divorce his wife. His wife is an ogress. She's the worst thing since planet Earth. And 5 years down the road, he's still living till he's not leaving. You know, that's an old story. You know, some people going through a divorce. If you are going through a divorce, you should have no right to have a relationship with somebody else. You're not free. You're still entangled, right? Some people just divorce, or from the frying pan into the fire. Most times, if you've just come out of a divorce, you shouldn't be looking for somebody else, because you need to straighten up your own head. One of the things we've realized, Vivian and I, is that marriage is the only thing that you don't get knowledge from experience. I don't know if I make any sense to you. In other words, being married 3 and 4 times don't mean that you know what to do for the 5th. That's the only thing. Everything else, if you get experience from it, you normally get better at it. But the psychologists and psychiatrists and those other people say, the more you are married, the less likely you are to succeed in marriage. So it doesn't work. You can't just jump from one to another. The person's already seen somebody. We're talking about danger signals. That person's already seen somebody. And what do they say to us, ladies? Well, yes, you have others, but you are the special one. You're the one who I really love, and we take bait. You know, come on. That person is living with somebody. And I had a conversation with somebody, and the person justified the fact that they having a relationship with this individual because they're not married. But he's living with somebody. There is some kind of commitment there. I grew up in the country, and if you see 2 young people talking in the village, you don't even go around the people, although there is no commitment yet. So I consider these as danger signals. Now, coming from a church perspective, I would start to say that you start spending time in groups. Try to avoid going out with somebody that you now met by yourself. What about with family, friends, others? Because usually there are other people who would want to go. He will have some other friends and family, cousins. You may have cousins and so on. The initial getting to know you should be in the group. If it's a church scene, well, there are a number of things that we have in church events for young people or people, as a matter of fact, and you go out in groups and begin to observe the person. You have to deliberately look for signs. So you're looking at how that person behaves. How does he treat people? Like, for example, you may go, let's say, to a restaurant, or that person has to be served, and the waiter may slip up, or waitress or something. So how respectful is that individual to that waitress or waiter? And you're getting a little inkling into the personality. Because that person is in public, and somebody is serving him, didn't get quite the right service, and you'll see how they will behave. If is that person gracious, towards that individual, and so on. So here we go. So we're moving on. Find out about the individual's family background. What kind of background did the person come from? And you may say, well, you're judging somebody. So what if I came, for example, like broken home, single parents, I was brought up by a family member, like a grandparent, aunt, uncle, adopted. Sometimes we have legal adoptions, you have loose adoptions. I grew up in the country where one family would have had quite a bit of children, and one couple didn't have any children, and they gave one to the person who had none. And many times the individual with no children or the couple with no children were better off. They had everything, and the parents or the mother would have given the child, thinking that the child will have a better chance at life than at home with you, with a number of siblings. Right? Now, all these things shape people's mind and their thinking and their philosophy and how they treat other people. And so it's important to find out. I want to go back to the fact that I am not saying that if you come from that kind of a background, you can't be a good spouse. I came from that kind of a background, right? Single parent, didn't have a relationship with my father, barely knew him, get to know him as an adult. Very dysfunctional. Generally, every family is dysfunctional. But I think my own was extremely dysfunctional, way beyond what was normal, right? And yet, God has been good to me. He is good to me. That Apostle Vivian and I are celebrating 42 years of marriage. So it is a possibility that you could come from dysfunction and still have a successful relationship. So I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying it is important for us to check all these things, and it will make the road along the way easier. The truth is, if I had understood the things that I'm telling you now, our relationship would have been less stormy. It was stormy at times. I give God praise that we not only survived but thrived. No short miracle. But it would have been easier if I had known these things. If I understood the impact that my background would have had on me and so on. My background was very abusive, and I was angry, and I didn't even give Vivian a chance to breathe. I mean, all you had to do is do something, and I already started to see him as the enemy, because what am I doing? Bringing things from my background, my past experiences into the relationship, and not justifiably so. And so it negatively affected the quality of the relationship from time to time. So I'm just saying, if we know these things, then we have to treat with them, with the counselor or the advisor, whoever it is that's working with you, then you deal with it. So the main thing I'm saying is that there may be dysfunction, but you cannot just be surprised. It can't spring up on you deep into the relationship, especially after you're married, and then to discover, oh, this was wrong, that was wrong. We didn't deal with it. I wasn't aware of it, and it just happens. So these are very important. Now, we living in an age where information is available to us. So guess what? Check the person's internet postings. Simple. In 2019 or 21st century, you could find anything about the average person on the internet, because we are given to too much information anyhow. So you are interested in somebody, jump on the internet and check. Sometime way back, the person says certain things, what they do, how they look, how they dress. I've seen a situation where finally this young girl got involved with this so-called gangster, And I mean, when the mother had to go, even the police warned her not to go in the place. And she had to go with the police to rescue the girl from wherever and so on. When they checked his internet postings, he is posing with a gun in his hand. So you are seeing somebody with an internet photo or whatever you put, and you're posing with a gun. And you think that that person is attractive or appealing, and not understanding that. Because obviously there would be some kind of violence somewhere down the road, whether it was a real gun, you're not sure. But why would somebody pose with that, right? You are interested in a young girl and you realize that she's posting all these photos of herself, minus clothing. And it gives you a little indication as to where we're going with that, because you're thinking wife. And when you reach the stage where you're thinking wife, you're not thinking naked wife. And by the time you are walking, feeling all proud with your wife down the road, everybody see what you alone should have been seeing, already, which is a situation there, right? So check the information. Find out what is the person's philosophy on a whole lot of stuff. What is the philosophy on life? And importantly, we want to talk a little bit about God. What's your philosophy on God? Since I am Pastor Jemma, we talk in church. What's your philosophy on money? How do you feel about money? What's your philosophy on marriage? How do you see marriage in your opinion? How you view marriage? What is your philosophy on things like home ownership? Some people believe that you shouldn't own any home. It's too much responsibility. There are a number of things that you want to find out from that person. Generally, what is your philosophy? What about career? What about vision? Is this person a visionary? And if that person is a dreamer or a visionary, are we going in the same direction? Because I need to find out if we're going to walk together. The Bible says, can two walk together except they agree? Two of us can be working together as life partners, and you thinking one way, you have a different philosophy, your vision is divorced from mine. No, at least we have to have a similarity of vision. Generally, we ought to be going in the same direction. Our philosophies must mesh. I mean, it doesn't mean that we are clones and we're going to think exactly the same way, but the philosophies must mesh. What about ambition? There are two persons, and generally there's a little imbalance at times in almost all relationships. One person might be a little more ambitious than the other. And so one of them is very careful about career, thinking about upward mobility, sees himself or herself achieving something by a certain date, and the other person thinks, you don't need all of that. What is all that about? It shouldn't matter. And what you do is kind of put a damper on that other person's, drive forward. And sometimes people get married and then to find out that the other person lacks ambition. And when want to go ahead, it will take the cooperation of the other individual. So I want to study. Then let's say you have babies or children, and one partner have to kind of look at the children while daddy is studying, try to keep them quiet, take them outside to play while you're trying to get some work done, you have an assignment or something. So that person don't see the need for you to be pushing forward at this stage. And so they're not going to help you. They will say, well, I see why I need to study any further. I'm not taking care of the children. I know some people, this particular person, when she did the course and the final exam came, right? It was an upgrade of what she had done. And on the day that she had to do the final exam, the husband went early and left her with the children. They had about 4 children or something. And there was no way she could have done anything at that point with those 4 children at the time. He made sure he didn't say before that I'm not going, so I would kind of get a babysitter or try to put them somewhere or get somebody to see about them. At the point that she was getting ready to go, he just drove off and left her. And after all the studying, he ensured that she couldn't take the exam. And that's somebody who, don't agree in terms of where we're going in terms of career. Very important, because Apostle Vivian talks a lot about support. And if you're talking somebody that you want to walk alongside with, there is need for each to support the other during times where that person has a dream and that dream has to be fulfilled. As we come to a close here today, I want you to know that this little discourse really is very inadequate in terms of preparation for relationship or dating. There is no way you could be prepared by what I said in like 30 minutes or so. It means then that most of the information and guidance you would get would come from your counselor, your advisor, and so on. This is just a kind of general stimulus, in terms of giving you guidelines as to where you should be heading and what are some of the things that you should pay attention to. So as we wind down, we're talking about another thing, baggage. What is this person bringing into this relationship? These days you have things like debt, right? Some people come with huge debts and did not indicate, and because you were not properly guided, didn't say anything to you, to the other person, and that question was not discussed. I know some people become very, very upset in counseling when you talk about that. They think it's their private business. Why are you going to ask me that? Yeah, but if you're going to get involved with somebody thinking marriage, then we have to talk about that. You can't be bringing in this and not saying to me, because sometimes you stymie the first few years of your marriage life. You can't move forward, you can't move sideways, you can't go anywhere, because the first few years is spent paying off somebody else's debt. And if that person is not very good with money, in terms of money management, chances are they're going to bring that same thing into the marriage. So that's something that you have to deal with. Another piece of baggage, and I don't want to I use that word loosely, would be children. It's not that the children, they're human beings and they're special. So I may have some children and you may have some children. And the thing is, when two persons bring in different children into the new relationship, you really start at a disadvantage, because most people, it takes a little while to even get off their foot in terms of finances and establishing a relationship and home and acquisition and all the things that you need to do to start off a marriage. And here we are with children from both sides having to take care of those children, and then you have your children, from both of you, which will become a little compounded. These are just situations that we have to deal with and speak about and, formulate plans. What else? Some people have emotional baggage, and that's a big one too. So all those things are what you should think about. There are so many things that we want to talk about, but your advisor will help you. Let me just touch on something before we close, though. Two things, not just one. Your level of maturity. You have to observe the person's physical maturity, emotional maturity, financial maturity, sexual maturity. All these things are important. It's a lot, it's plenty, it's a big thing. And as I close, I wanted to leave that with you. Depending on the length of time that you anticipate this dating process should take, I would suggest that we avoid getting physical. I consider physical involvement is like Pandora's box. And for those of you, if you don't know what Pandora's box is, go just Google Pandora's box. And when you open Pandora's box, emotions are very difficult to control. And so I would suggest leave a Pandora's box closed until, marriage is for life. You intend to spend the rest of your life with that person, you can leave the box closed, because, it could create some situations there. And in order for us to control Pandora's box, I would suggest that you choose public places where intimacy is not possible. Just if we only go to places where you can't be intimate, then it's not going to happen, right? In closing, one thing I want to leave with you is, if you're going to ask an advisor, a counselor for counsel, take the counsel. And that is the problem. People come for counsel, they come for advice. We don't usually take the advice.
Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me. Know his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for
Have you received a promise from God and it seems like it's never going to happen? Do you feel all alone, like nothing's working right, and the people you thought would help you are working against you? Well, you're not alone. Thousands of years ago, a man named David was anointed by God to be king of Israel. But instead of a smooth road to the throne, he went through some unexpected challenges. Coming from a dysfunctional family, he persevered against giants, jealousy, self-doubt, and personal failures to become the greatest king in the history of Israel and set the standard for worship because he kept his heart focused on God. I'm Dr. Angel Duncan, and I want to invite you to join me on a journey through the life of David in my new book, 1 Month with the King, 31 Lessons from the Life of King David. For each lesson, there are corresponding activities in the companion interactive study journal. This is designed for you to apply what you learn. This book was written to encourage the hearts of people who have received promises from God that seem long in coming. Most importantly, emphasis is placed on seeing the process through God's eyes and fulfilling the promise in God's heart. In the end, may God say about you what he said about David in Acts chapter 13, verse 22. I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after mine own heart, which shall fulfill all my will. Pick up your copy today at Amazon.com or any major online bookseller.
I don't want you to ever forget what Jesus said. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except by me. God bless you real good.